Strap yourself in and get ready. The leaders in NBL Supercoach are incoming, giving you the ultimate insight to help you dominate your mates and climb up the rankings. You're now listening to the Insight NBL Show with your hosts, Matrix and Hammer.
Guys, welcome back to the Insight NBL Show. Look, I'm excited to get straight into it. I'm the Supercoach Matrix, and I got scratched in the face getting called a little bitch at basketball last night. How are you, Hammer?
Better than you by the sounds of it, although I'm not that great after some of the injury news we've got this week. It's going to be a huge show. There's plenty to unpack tonight, mate.
I just want to counter that by it might not be the most negative thing, the injury news. Just because we've got thrown, it might sort the boys from the men. I think if we can get onto the right place instead of just heading to the obvious Taran Armstrong-sized elephant in the room, I've done 3 posts today on Twitter and X. All of them had pictures of Taran Armstrong in. That was before he was injured. So that's how keen I was on Taran.
Yeah, look, I think we all were, and it's probably good for once we've got this news early, so we've got time to pivot. We can unpack it tonight, break it down, get some thoughts, feelings, concerns on the whole situation, because we always know one man's misfortune is the next man's next game up. So time to figure out who's going to be the beneficiary.
Never heard that one before, but all I'm hearing is Rob Lowe captain. On today's show, we've got breaking news. We're going to have some look in these earlier rounds, and while people have boosts, we're going to have an argument for and against of whether to boost and whether to not boost this week. We're going to head into some game previews. We're going to go through some popular trades, our community team if we've got time, and head into the captain talk. As per usual, I want to start with letting everybody know who's on doubles and who's on double-doubles. For our newer members, double-doubles are 2 games in a row, and we have nobody on double-doubles this week. But we do have Cairns, Adelaide, and Sydney on doubles this week. Look, there's going to be so much tied to that, but let's head into breaking news with our own Sandra Sully Hammer.
It's time for some news from around the league.
Sandra Sully. I feel like you can give me enough credit to be Kendall Gilding or something. I'm not that old. Hey, mate, plenty going on around the league. Yeah. Look, plenty going on around the league. Probably start with the biggest one is the injury news out of Cairns. We've had confirmation earlier that both Armstrong and Tanner Groves are out for the weekend. So some massive holes for the Snakes to fill and some holes in our teams. We'll unpack tonight what that might look like. Also, same game, game 1 of the round is Cairns versus Perth. Keanu Pinder ruled out of that game as well. So it's going to open up some opportunities for Almanza and a few other guys that you might be holding on your bench. We'll unpack that when we get to that game. Also, you see the news with Bogut tweeting about McVeigh, saying he'll be home by Christmas.
I mean, I saw a little bit of the game that he played today. 8 points, 8 minutes. Like, maybe it is just Bogut watching as a fan, like us watching Freddie Gillespie, and without any real news out there saying Freddie Gillespie's going to be the first one going home. Look, I think Jack McVeigh is the type of guy that will just fill a role and be completely fine with just filling a role. I don't think he'll be home by Christmas. I think he's good enough to be a low-end NBA player.
Mate, if he was coming home by Christmas, what a dick move. And my main man, shout out to Josh Majet, former Jack jumper. He's come out on Twitter and defended it, saying this is a pretty low blow from the official NBL website to repost that and to push that message when we should be getting behind Jack and his dream. So as much as I'd love my Jack Jumpers to have him back, I hope he sticks it out over there. The only other news coming out of the NBL today was, I didn't realise this, Cotton is in a contract year And there are a number of teams circling for his signature next year with naturalisation on the horizon.
Yeah, this is a real interesting one because I always talk about in NRL. It's always good to really get some guys on a yeah. Bogut does love to stir some shit. I love to get guys on a contract year because usually they pop out and really prove themselves and maybe cruise a little bit after they sign that big contract. Bryce Cotton, nearly the opposite has happened this year when I was thinking about it. He has probably played two of his worst games I've probably ever seen him play in the NBL this season already. So maybe he gets the nerves when it's a contract year.
Or maybe he has to be half as good if he can play as an Australian.
Yeah.
Who knows?
True.
But that's it for breaking news. Plenty going on and plenty of us for us to unpack later on the show.
Mate, we're sitting pretty similar positions wise, I would say, in the competition. We're both going really well at the moment, and I believe we've both ripped one boost. Now, if you haven't had a boost, do you think now or this week is a good week to boost and maybe get a couple guys to generate some cash? If you're a bit down in the ranks, do you think you would boost to try and move up? Just let's start with like the players, say in the top couple of thousand, mate. Do you think this is a boost week?
It could be. It really depends why you're boosting. And I think if you haven't used one, there's probably not a lot of harm in doing it because a lot of the top teams have, and a lot of them boosted last week. If you're using your second boost, I'd be a lot more hesitant. I mean, you've been thinking about this a bit. Are you boosting for cash gen, or are you boosting to maintain a team of doubles?
See, I'm sitting relatively high at the moment on the points, and I'm thinking about boosting, but not for the points. I'll boost if it gives me a captain. So that is the only way that I'm chasing points. If it's the last one to get a captain, but I think I'm boosting to tidy up some spots on my bench, maybe a couple of certain Hawks that have been a bit disappointing. Boost to some guys that I think can make a lot of cash, and I think I'll make those points up later with that cash. Of course, you can start to do this with two. If you planned really well last week, you could do this with only two. But I feel like to get in a really good captain option and a couple of cash cows, it could be a boost week. I come into this week thinking next week getting the breakers aren't as exciting as I thought, but maybe we're going to be chasing that Taron Armstrong as well as a couple of breakers, though, is the problem next week.
See, I'd always circled that round 5, the return of the breakers, as a boost week. We know round 5, there's only 2 teams on the double. That's New Zealand and Tassie. Now, if we're setting up our teams and we think of this week as a bit of a setup week, if we're prepared to potentially not have all of our starters on a double, maybe, we need to get some guys in. But looking at New Zealand, PJC for me is a lock. He's scored so well in their first 2 games, he's going to go up in cash, and he's probably going to be a captain option. All right, he's probably about one of the only captain options next week. Looking at Tassie, Magnay and Doyle are probably the only other 2 I'd be looking at. New Zealand's pretty thin. The only ones I'd be looking at in New Zealand would not be really startable any other week. Maybe Menenga.
Yep. I don't know. Like I come in like kind of high on like a Mitch McCarron or somebody like that. I don't want any of their forwards. I don't really want any of their centers. It's honestly only really PJC I'm looking at.
Yeah. And when I flagged pre-season that round 5 would be a boost for New Zealand, I was expecting to be looking at PJC, potentially Mooney, possibly Bolden, who's been severely disappointing.
His mum's been disappointed.
Yeah, as she should be. Look, I think you could bring the boost a week early as long as you've got the cash to bring in PJC. So I don't hate boosting, but I will look at every option otherwise. But like you said, if you're right for next week, maybe you can boost this week for your Kyron Galloways or something to get some cash and to get a playable guy. But You need a guy who's going to have a schedule coming through the next couple of weeks that you can hold for a little bit.
Yeah.
Actually, talking New Zealand, man, this has just popped up. This is a guy I have been looking at. Crafty Fat
Yes.
Boys come and dropped a bomb. Kareem Lopez. We know your score comes off a 3-game rolling average. He had 0 in his first game in 11 minutes. He popped off for 11 or so,
Yep.
maybe 15 in his second game. And he has been putting in some work over in the NBL NBA crossover game. So that 0 will drop out of his score. He could be a play at that next star price of 115K. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I do really like it. You could probably wait a week.
Mm-hmm.
Though on Lopez, though, I don't think it's boost worthy.
No.
Where it's popping in there. But do I think he's better than Almanza? Yeah, I probably think he's a better play than Almanza for Supercoach. I know Pinder's out this week, but it's only a single.
Yeah, and both coming into very good schedule. So that's something to break down probably on next week's pod. But yeah, a lot to think about with the boosts. I can see it from both sides.
Yeah, congratulations. We didn't help you at all. But that's probably an argument for and against. Like, save the boost if you're really high on those New Zealand players to get them this week. But if you think that you can get a big cash jump from your, I don't know, your Galloways, your Prathers, you get in a captain option like a Cooks or an Adams or somebody like this week, then yeah, maybe it could be worth it. Mate, let's head into our weekly preview.
He's heating up.
Mate, and that's brought to us here by Game Day Squad. They've been great getting on board here with us. Just another way to play fantasy basketball. You can pop in, get some cards, start playing straight away. It's free to play, but you can also sell some of these cards for cash. You can win cash prizes. It has a dynasty element. I know that sounds really hard to say that it's a you can win weekly prizes, but it's got a dynasty element. But you can honestly just really add guys like Kyron Galloway, which I bought a couple of weeks ago for literally nothing. And now that he's come into his schedule, now that he's starting to get this bigger role, I can cash out and maybe, sell him and get some blokes like Cotton and things and players like that in the next coming weeks. So it's a real balancing act between getting players that you can use on a week to week basis, but also building over time and making some money and winning the weekly prizes. It's a lot of fun. Get involved, get some free cards on us, and you get in touch with the Game Day Squad and build your squad. I'll be putting my up this week on Twitter. Have a look, play against us, and it's just like when you play your NRL fantasies and your AFL fantasies and your super coaches, there's so many ways to play in those other sports. With NBL, honestly, it's Game Day Squad and Supercoach, and I love playing them both. Mate, let's head into the week. And first off, it's Cairns versus Perth. We know Pinder's out for Perth. We know Cairns is on a double. Some of the guys that we would be, of course, we know Taryn's out. Some of the guys that we would be looking at for Cairns essentially would be your Rob Edwards, your Kyron Galloways, your Sam Wardenbergs. What matchups do you like against Perth?
Yeah, look, this game is probably a lot to do with who's out. There's guys here who are going to get an opportunity, and it's a tough one because the schedule goes a little cold after this for Cairns. And do we have the luxury trades to bring some of these guys in for 1 week rentals? Unless, of course, we've already got them on our bench. So let's talk about who's going to have an expanded role because of Groves and Armstrong being out. The ones I'm seeing who are going to pop up will be Kyle Adnam. Is he viable? He played that first game where we didn't have Taron Armstrong, and he was solid. He had 16 Supercoach points in about 24 minutes. He's played some really good spot minutes since then. He's around 80K. Is this someone you could potentially bring in, hoping he's going to deliver over a double game and save that much cash you can easily bank it for PJC the next week?
I mean, you could. Sometimes it's not what you spend; it's what you save. And what you save out of Kyle Adnam, if he can get you, let's say 20 points over 2 games, he's going to go up in price.
That's lowballing. I'd say probably a bare minimum. I reckon he could go 40 over 2 games.
Okay,
I really do.
let's say his highest score this year is 16. So yeah.
But,
So
it was his first game back from injury. He's not young. I feel like there's more upside. The last couple of games, he's done more in less minutes, I reckon.
You know what? I'm going to have a counter argument that I don't like Kyle Adnam this week. I like Rob Edwards.
Okay.
I just think that he's the type of caliber player, like your Kendrick Davises, like your Jalen Adams. He's upper echelon, and I think that the upside is so much higher when Taran. Like, I was impressed as to what he did with Taran Armstrong playing. I think that he could be a captain option this week. Really.
Do you think he's that much better without Taran Armstrong?
Yeah, I think he is.
Do you want to give you the data on it?
Yeah, please.
All right. Without Taran, he's dropped 24 Supercoach points and 36 Supercoach points. With Taran, he's dropped 31 and 25, so pretty much identical. I feel like he's almost a better player with Taran in the lineup. I feel like, remember when Taran was not there and he had the ball carrying duties, and we were talking about on the pod, he had 31 actual points for 31 Supercoach points, something like that.
Yep.
I think when he's playing not his natural position, it compromises his ability to do everything. All right,
But I think that now that Adnam's back in playing that role, he's going to play his more natural role, but you're going to get so much less offense from Kyle Adnam that Rob Edwards will step up in the scoring. Like, you were getting 29 Supercoach points from Taran, say, I don't know, off the top of my head, 15 points. You're going to get a lot less from Adnam, so they're going to be reliant on Edwards a little bit more as well. You've got your Jackson McCall come back and into the lineup, maybe play at 8 minutes, something like that. Rob Edwards is going to have to play a huge role if the Snakes go well this week. And I tell you what, I've been having a little punt on the Snakes recently because Sportsbet haven't quite worked out that these guys are good at basketball. I'm all aboard the Snake train. I don't know what I'm going to call that. Up north in Cairns, you call it the cane train.
Look, to your point, Adnam missed the first game this year. He played the second without Taran Armstrong. In that game, he had... in that game where Kyle Adnam played those minutes and allowed Rob to go to the 2 spot, that was his highest scoring game with 36 Supercoach points.
Yep.
So I can see this happening. Kyle really is a facilitator. He gets in. He still looks for his own, but I think he will get the rock to who needs it. All right, who else are we looking at for Cairns that's going to benefit? The other two I've got, Galloway.
Yeah, and I had this argument in my head on the way home, and hear me out. The first thing, I'm like, Tanner Groves is out, Taran Armstrong's out, Kyron Galloway's going to have to do more. But then I was also thinking, Kyron Galloway's had his best games with Taran Armstrong. Of course, with Tanner out. I'm just trying to work out whether Taran Armstrong makes Kyron Galloway better, whether opportunity makes Kyron Galloway better, or Kyron Galloway is just better. And that's the argument I'm having in my head.
And it depends which end of the floor you're looking at. I think offensively, Taran just slings that ball around, and we saw a lot of catch and shoot opportunities for Kyron Galloway. He's a sort of an undersized 4. He leaks out, and he's been shooting the piss out of the ball this year. They're finding him. Whether that still happens with Adnam and Rob sharing the point guard duties, who knows? But he has had, 3 steals the last game. He's been doing a bit on the defensive end, and we've always known with Kyron, even going back to Adelaide, that was his value. He put together some really strange stat lines with steals and blocks, and all of a sudden you think he hasn't done much, and he's popped off for 20 Supercoach points. So, look, it's hard to rely on because those stats aren't always there. He doesn't always have the blocks to show for it, but he's definitely a good play, and he's got a lot of upside cash-wise. Here's another option that we haven't talked about, or we have talked about in saying how bad the bloke is, but Pedro Bradshaw, guard forward eligible, 258K. Now, this is the important bit because Rob Edwards is up around that 290K, which if you try and bring in him and maybe a Xavier Cooks, would be a bit cost prohibitive. Going to that lower price point, if you're trading out maybe an Illy, maybe it's more doable. Would Bradshaw be a guy who's going to benefit from all these outs?
I honestly don't mind bringing in Bradshaw this week, but I genuinely haven't seen that much I've liked from Bradshaw. Like, you'd love for him to step up, but I'm not bank on a guy that I legit haven't seen take that step. I am probably betting on the fact that he could be closer to 230K next week than us getting a price rise or him, I suppose, stepping up. Pedro has a break even of 54 as well.
Us too.
Yeah, look,
Yeah.
I honestly see him dropping cash, to be honest.
Look, I don't see him making cash. I think if you bought him in and he got his break even, you'd be happy with that. If you were playing him, as a starter and you're trying to bridge that gap. But yeah, look, you really want to be looking at guys who might make some cash as well. Do we need to look somewhere other than the Snakes this week?
Yeah, maybe we do. Look, when I have a look at Perth, I do think that Almanza is probably a
hold.
Maybe I wouldn't trade him out this week if I had him. I think he definitely would have been, lined up against the wall, ready for the 6-shooter if Pinder was still playing. So let's just hold on 1 week with Almanza. But the next game have another couple guys on doubles. And we're looking at Adelaide versus Sydney, Friday night, 6:30. I think we've established that Kendrick Davis is him. I think we've established that Jalen Galloway isn't very good. Jalen Adams is Bryce Cotton-esque this year. And we've both admitted we were wrong with Xavier Cooks. So if you had to pick a captain option out of Davis, Cooks, and Adams, who do you have?
Yeah, this is tough. So Kendrick Davis I really like that. He's got a defined role. There's not really, outside of Kadee, who's going to play spot minutes, there's not that competition that we see in Sydney with the depth. But Adelaide play Sydney, and then they play Melbourne, which is notoriously a tough hunting ground for guards with Illy and Delhi, and even Flynn Cameron chasing them around. So they're tough matchups. Jalen Adams, look, I don't think Kendrick Davis can guard his shadow, so I think he's going to have a field day there. And then Sydney's other matchup is Cairns with Kyle Adnam, who is he's like a rusty gate. He just opens and you go straight by him. So I think the better matchups goes to Jalen Adams. What I'm scared about is that they're going to be blowouts. And this is what scares me with Cooks and Adams. They may blow out Adelaide. Well, that might be a decent game, but I think it's shaping to be a blowout, Sydney versus Cairns on the Sunday. Do we get to the point where after halftime, Sydney put the cue in the rack and the starters go to the bench, and you just got to hope they've got 40 each by halftime?
They genuinely didn't sit Cooks as quickly as they sat Adams, which is something I noticed in the last couple games. I don't know if it was the fact that Adams had played so much, but I have a little bit more confidence that in a blowout, Cooks is going to play more minutes.
But look, I did write in the Patreon game wrap. I was watching that Sydney one you're talking about. 44 Supercoach points at halftime for Cooks. He came out, messed around a little in the third, finished with 48 Supercoach points, and they put him on ice. That's what I'm worried about up in Cairns because they're so thin up front. Why don't these guys give some of their younger talent a go? They've got some guys who, and Cairns are going to be small up front outside of AK Gak, but maybe this is the time for those Lepepe holders and stuff. He's going to get some extended burn after dropping 22 actual points last week.
Do you think Lepepe is a chance of being a starter this week? Is one that I've got. Like, could you start Lepepe with I don't know, with confidence. Could you start Lepepe this week?
Ooh, it depends. Who are you putting on the bench who's on a single? Would I start Lepepe on a double over Jack White, say, on a single? Probably not. Let's say Jack White gets, let's say, low 30s, 34, 17 a game.
Yep.
Is Lepepe going to get 17 a game? I think that's a ceiling. Do it consistently.
Yeah. All right. So I think if I got, like, he's averaging 15. I think if I got 30 from him, I would be fine rather than playing him in front of some of the other, I'm going to say, scrubby guys that you've got on the bench. Maybe you can't. Jack White is the guy that I would play on the single over Lepepe, and basically everybody else that you're holding on the bench. In my plans, I'd planned on playing Magne on a single this week.
Yep.
I think Magne and White are the guys I'd play over Lepepe.
Yeah, I think both of those are a lot more viable on a single. It really depends on the makeup of your team. If you're scraping, he's definitely a better option than some of your other guys. I'd play him ahead of maybe Latmayan, even on a double. I'd play him ahead of Ben Henschel if you got him at forward. So look, depending on the makeup of your squad, he's borderline playable.
Cool. That answered my questions there, mate. Look, Illawarra versus Tasmania. We are talking about Will Magne, playing him on a single possibly through this one. I don't think you're holding anyone from Illawarra. I'm genuinely looking at some of these guys from Illawarra and trying to work out how I'm going to get them out of my team. They weren't the cash cows I'd hoped.
Yeah, I'm ready to move on from both Hickey and Aldrich, and the schedule now is just turned to absolute pus. We've got such a long string of singles. We're almost at the point where we want to get rid of them, hope they drop cash, and then remember how to play basketball by the end of the year when the schedule starts to get a bit stronger. Tassie's a really interesting one here, though. Tassie, like we said, only them in New Zealand on doubles in round 5. We've probably flagged a few guys that are on the radar to come in, but after that, Tassie then have a back-to-back double coming up, and they've got a solid schedule for the next probably 5 rounds. Yeah.
Yeah, they do. It's a little hit and miss, and I might even bring it up on the screen because they go single, double, single, double, double, and then that's the point that you can get off. I'm going to find a way, I think, to hold Magne through this period. I don't know. It's Magne and Doyle for me. I hear some people in the chat talking about Crawford. I need to see more from him before I'd considering gambling my my Supercoach points that I love. But I just don't think I could bet on anyone but Doyle and Magne at the moment. But if there's not even any cash cows really there for me. Like, they've all come in, like Drimich and players like this. They've all come in at that 190K. There's no growth.
Yeah. Look, the one that is probably a short-term cash cow is Majok Deng. We saw Magne, much to the disgust of a lot of us Magne owners, pretty much get benched. You know, he was sitting on the pine getting splinters in his ass after half-time last game. And they went with Majok Deng, similar to the finals last year, and he just went bang. This guy's a microwave, came on the bench, lit it up. Pretty Supercoach-friendly game. But this is the first time we've seen that this year. And I've been calling for him to start ahead of he who should not be named in Tarangi. Mate, is Majok Deng fool's gold, or is this something we could probably ride out for the next couple of weeks if we've got a luxury trade for the bench?
I don't think he's a better trade-in than Casey Prather or Kyron Galloway. That's where I sit with it. Even though the schedule is better, I still think Casey Prather and Kyron Galloway are better trade-ins this week.
I'd have to agree. And I'll tell you why. You're bringing them in to make cash. I don't think there is a situation really outside of maybe round 5 where you'd play Majok Deng on your court. Because I think if you were to hold over, say, Xavier Cooks on a single, I'd be betting my left nut that he's going to go bigger than Majok Deng in that game.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah. Magnay's an interesting one. I'm very off him at the moment. I've traded him out of my team, and I was looking at bringing in Xavier Cooks. This is back when I had Taron Armstrong. I'm going to have to rejig now and see how the cash situation is. But Blair's jumped in the chat saying Magnay was ill in the second game. I have heard reports of that. I was almost ill too, watching him almost squander my captaincy. But look, do we give him a pass on that? Are we confident that he's probably going to potentially drop a bit of cash? Are we still holding him for a couple of weeks?
The thing is, it's what you do with the money, and I think without trading Magnay, now with the price rises to Jalen Adams and Xavier Cooks, I'm not sure you can do that in one trade unless it's Magnay. I'm not looking to trade out a Montrezl Harrell this week. I don't want to trade out a Kendrick Davis or anyone like that this week. That's where I fall with it. And I'm really struggling. Like the people say I did boost. It's people like Rob Lowe, Will Hickey, Lockie Ulbrich that I want out the most.
Yeah.
I don't know how to keep them in the team. I don't know if I can go to anyone that I want enough without doing that.
Yeah. And that's understandable. I think that boost that you're talking about using it's more to get rid of dead wood, isn't it? It's not really to bring anyone of consequence in.
Yeah, and I think that could tidy up a lot of my team.
Mm. And how good is it having boosts in this format? Because I know in the old fantasy format, I got stuck with Kevin White for a whole season. And how much would a boost have helped that?
I do love the boosts. I think it keeps everybody engaged in this format. So yeah, I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah, for sure. What's our next game?
Mate, as we head into the next one, I just want to shout out our sponsor, Ryan from Astute Newstead. Mate, he's been on board with us basically since day one. A big fan of the show, loves his NBL, loves his NRL. And look, if you call him up or you send him an email and say you want a quote on a home loan, you want to see how much you can borrow. Not only will he let you know your maximum lend in the situation you're in, help you get into your dream home, maybe help you refinance your home to save money every week, maybe for that extra carton a week, maybe for that maybe just so that you can spend a little more around your house. He'll chat to you about NRL Supercoach. He'll chat to you about NBL Supercoach, and he'll even give you a hand with your team. So get in contact with him. He's a great bloke just to have a chat to, but he can help you in your everyday needs when it comes to rising interest rates and everything like that. If your interest rates are above 6.2%, get in contact and let him know that the Insight Boys sent you, mate. Southeast Melbourne versus Brisbane. I could not think of more of a dead rubber for Supercoach.
Yeah. Look, the only ones of consequence in there are Casey Prather, if you bring him in. He's a cash cow. You've got that little bit of conflict going on with your decision-making, though, with the schedule. But like you said before, I think it's doable. And he's probably the only relevant one here. And we are getting closer to that run of doubles. Like we're coming up to round 4. Round 9, they become relevant, right?
Yeah, I think round 9 they do become relevant. It's hard because I genuinely think that Tyrell Martin will be too much money to focus on too much by round 9 by now. I think he's just going to... Yeah, Tyrell Harrison, sorry. He's going to keep banging out these 30s to 40s every week. And he's going to be 350K. And he's going to be kind of like Keanu Pinder. Has Keanu Pinder been good? Yes. Are we looking at him for Supercoach? Probably not. Which is the disappointing thing about the schedule this year.
Yeah.
But look, Rocco's ill. Honestly, Tyrell Harrison's going to have to play a lot this week.
Yeah. And you're right. Tyrell's the man at 220K. I don't know if he's the man at 350K.
Yep. Nobody from Southeast Melbourne really you should be holding with this schedule. They do hit a bit of they do hit a lot of relevance come round 6. But a lot of other guys become really good as well. But I'm probably what I've learnt from Melbourne and maybe this whole Shaili Delhi situation is maybe in round 6 I will target Southeast Melbourne a little bit more than Melbourne. So but that's a story for another day. I'm just going to be keeping a watch out as to who I want to add.
And I think that'll be if you hold Magnay through the next 2 rounds and you try and capitalize on him in that round 5 when they're on the double, it's probably a nice little sideways move from Magnay to Matt Hurt on 3 straight doubles. That's probably the relevant one to keep in your back pocket.
Yeah, true. Mate, Sydney versus Cairns, 2 teams that are playing doubles. We didn't mention Cam Oliver, who is very highly owned, and we didn't mention Sam Wardenberg in our last analysis of Cairns and Sydney teams. Mate, what's the outlook for Cam, and coincidentally, what's the outlook for Wardenberg?
Yeah, look, I hold both currently. I think, look, Wardenberg, the 50 piece he dropped the other night is going to drop out of his 3-game rolling average. So that's possibly going to hurt. I think he's probably going to be at the higher end of his floor here. So 25s is what you'd probably accept from him over the 2 games. If he had a 50 across the 2, I'd be happy. We've discussed his ineffectiveness as far as Supercoach goes, in that he gets some points if he's hitting his shots, and he'll get 5 or 6 rebounds. He doesn't often contribute across the rest of the stat sheet, but they're going to rely on him because with Groves out, they're going to have him, they're going to have Galloway, and they're going to have Gack covering the 4 and the 5 spot. So he's going to have to carry the burden. Do you hold either of these guys?
No, I currently don't. I traded out Cam Oliver because I haven't been impressed.
Yeah.
Got rewarded last week, I would say, by holding on to them. I think a lot of people did hold Cam Oliver and they were a touch behind me this one. I also think the people that got on Sam Wardenberg have generated a fair bit of cash. I think Wardenberg owners got really lucky last week with the Tanner Groves injury. But hey, you got to take
lucky
it.
or skilled, considering I bought him in.
It was lucky.
Cam Oliver's one that I'm really, really off. I will be holding him on the double, but he's likely to drop a little bit of cash as well. I'm just hoping, in the same vein that we said, maybe Cooks and that might not play as much because of some blowouts versus Cairns. I'm hoping they give some extended burn to Cam Oliver here and let him go to work against those Cairns bigs. I think he's also going to be a solid matchup against Adelaide. So we've talked in the past about having Humph and Montrezl Harrell being quite limited out on the perimeter. And we've seen Cam Oliver all year just not want to put a foot inside the 3-point line. He's shooting his threes and it's hurting his rebounds. But maybe he gets more of a run against them as a matchup as compared to Lepepe.
Yep. Oh, I rate it. I do hope. Look, I hope it does work out for some of those Oliver owners. I just think Cooks is the man there. He's basically becoming a little bit of a shooter out there. But I do think Cairnsy is one of those matchups that he could look to dominate, especially with Tanner Groves not there.
And looking at the makeup of your team, though, I could have got rid of Cam Oliver, bought in Cooks and Taron Armstrong and been pretty happy. With the Armstrong news, I'm probably looking at spending more on that guard position. And it's going to mean I'm going to have to get rid of Magnay as opposed to a Cam Oliver. So a lot of things to work out there. Sometimes it's not exactly what you want to do just because of the way the money works. But look, Oliver's been disappointing to say the least.
Yeah. Mate, there's only the one more game, and that's Melbourne versus Adelaide. Look, Shea Ili and Jack White are two guys that I want to bring up due to the fact that they've got break evens of, I think it's 8 and 9, respectively. They've both been making. Jack White's been making cash. Shea Ili lost a touch, despite scoring really well in the. Well, I mean, he had a banger. He had 2 shit games, a good game, and a shit game. Jack White is the hold for me over Shea Ili, but is there an argument for holding Ili this week against Adelaide?
Look, 100% agree. Jack White is the hold. If you bring up that schedule again and you look at the way Melbourne plays over the next couple of weeks, there's so they got round 4 off here on a single. Round 5, pretty much everyone's on a single, and then you got the 3 back-to-back doubles. I see myself holding him through until the end of round 8. He's made 54,800 so far. He's been one of the highest cash earners, and he's a productive cash cow. He's given you both, so I really like that. Shea Ili, on the other hand, I get really vindictive. If you've screwed me over, I just want you out of my team. I can't even look at you. But that break even is a little bit attractive, so I don't think I'm in the position where I can hold him, just because at 240k. I just need to move that on to be able to bring someone else in, because my 2 bench guards currently, I think it's Henschel and Hickey, they're almost unplayable. So I really need to move Ili on. But if you've got a playable bench and you can keep him another week and generate some cash, I don't see it as such a bad thing.
Yeah, I think there's an argument for and an argument against. I think if you can keep him, it's not the end of the world. You might get a little bit. You're not going to lose any money out of holding Ili, is probably the point I'm getting across. And I think I would definitely rather. Here's one: you trade out Shea Ili, and you can get Jalen Adams in 2 trades. You can get Shea Ili and. You can get Shea Ili to Jalen Adams, trading out, say, Lockie Ulbrich, or you can trade out Rob Lowe instead of Ili, but you have to play Rob Edwards instead of Adams. So basically, hold Ili on a single, start Rob Edwards, or get rid of, say, Davo Hickey.
God, your would you rathers are pretty twisted, Matrix. This is sounding a lot like, would you rather watch your parents have sex every night for the rest of your life, or join in once to make it stop? Like, how do you decide out of that? That's just ridiculous. Which way are you going?
I think I would rather start Rob Edwards and have the opportunity to maybe make a little money out of Ili than ever look at Robert Lowe in my Supercoach team ever again.
Yeah, that's understandable. Yeah, right.
I'm just looking for opportunities to get blokes like Davo Hickey out if I can this week. Like whether I boost or not's a different story, but I just think Davo, the quicker I move on from Davo Hickey, the further I can move away from the pack. So many people will be holding people like Will Hickey through this period, and I just want to cut ties as soon as I can.
Yeah, no, makes sense.
Mate, that takes us through that segment. Let's have a look at some of the popular trades this week. Sorry, I'm really slow on the intros today.
Targets acquired.
It's a new one?
Yeah, did you like that?
Oh, love it.
Mate, look, one of the most popular trades out is Will Magnay for Xavier Cooks. What? Would you rather Rob Edwards have sex with your parents? Yeah, I rate that. What do you think about people trading out Will Magnay for Xavier Cooks?
I'm high on it. I've looked at doing it, and I probably will. I think Cooks he's just having a career year. He's looking really good, and I've got concerns about Magnate. Both those games weren't horrendous last week, but they didn't score well. Like that 13 and 13 double-double, didn't have any other stats. Did we get a bit excited on that big game he had with 5 blocks? That's not gonna happen every week.
Yeah, I think maybe we did overreact a little bit, but it was due to having a double at the right time. He was the most captain player and everything out there. There wasn't a lot of good captain options this week. I don't hate it. It's just when you look at the schedule and you see the guys on doubles next week, I would hate for you to have to trade in Xavier Cooks only to go Xavier Cooks back to Magnay. I think if you trade Magnay out this week, you've made your bed, line it.
Yeah, I don't think you would bring him back. And I see other captain options. Like I would go PJC as a captain over Magnay. So you will have a captain option if you can afford to bring PJC in the next week. Doyle's also one you could look at as well. He had 37 Supercoach points in that overtime game, and he's playing big minutes. He hasn't played below 34 minutes this season, I think,
Yeah.
which is not. I mean, it's quite unusual for a Tassie team. They normally spread the minutes around, but he seems to be the guy who they're going to play him all night long. And uh, yeah, I like Cooks this week, even despite the schedule. And Tassie give me a bit of a scare here because they're playing Illawarra, who are solid, and I don't think it's a great matchup for Magna.
No, I do agree with you. I do think maybe, like, remember when Tyrell Harrison played against. Well, I think it was Tyrell Harrison played against Sam Froling and scored really well, even
Yep.
though it was technically probably a harder matchup. I do think with the way that Magnay plays anytime he plays a bigger center, it's going to be a better Supercoach game for him rather than having to run around and try and rotate out to the wings.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And we know that Illawarra play inside out. They go to Froling early. They go to Darius Days early, which also means they're going to be going at Magnay. And if he's not careful and doesn't stay out of foul trouble, that could be another issue.
Yeah. But I teed you up with the Xavier Cooks versus Will Magnay when that one was open for everybody ranked. But if you go to the ranked in the top 5%, the biggest trade out is Jack White to Xavier Cooks. And I know this is one that everybody probably had penciled in. You started to look at it after Jack White come out a little bit disappointing in those first 2 weeks. But I'd probably nearly advise against this when Jack White could nearly be a cash cow and a good scorer at the same time.
Yeah. I think the argument here is you're either trading out Jack White or Cam Oliver or Magnay. And if I'm trading out any of them, it's a difficult decision. Like Cam Oliver's on a double this week. There's one reason to keep him. You could get rid of him because he's been trashed. Magnay's one of the only ones on a double next week. There's a reason to keep him. But he had a puss round last week and he's going to lose cash this week. There's a reason to get rid of him. Jack White has been probably the best cash cow and he's going to keep going up with an ridiculously low break even. But he's on a single. So you can make an argument every which way. Would you be justified in trading Jack White for him over Magnay?
No, I still think I would trade Magnay out over Cooks, even with the looming double coming next week.
Yeah. I don't want to get rid of White. And when we brought up the schedulerizer before and we looked at that, I really think that run of 3 doubles, and essentially next round's a free swing with no one on doubles outside of those 2 teams. I think Jack White's holdable for the next 4 to 5 rounds.
Mate, Shea Illy is the most traded out guy, and people are going to have to adjust because Shea Illy out for Taron Armstrong. Reverse your trades. That was the easiest trade we were all going to have to do this week. Apologies to the community.
For sure. But I don't think it's going to change as much. I think Illy's still going to be an out for a lot of teams. It's just not going to be for Armstrong. We're just going to work out who we can afford, and it might be a case of you're going to have to go with a cheaper option at forward to bring a more expensive guard in.
Well, that's an excellent segue because Shea Illy to Kyron Galloway is the third highest trade. What do you think about Kyron as the replacement for Taran?
Yeah, look, if you can massage it to be able to get a guard and a forward, I don't think Kyron is in the same category as starting a Cooks or someone like that. But I think he's better than a Wardenberg. I think he's probably better than a Cam Oliver.
Yeah, it's such a fine line between. So, say you've got this decision to make as to whether you're trading in a Kyron or a Cook. So maybe it's the difference between getting out a Rob Lowe or a Magnay as to whether you want to focus on cash generation this week, and that's the Kyron Galloway play, or whether you just want to get points on the board. Because if Xavier Cooks comes out and scores a 90 and you're not captaining him, you could really see yourself sliding in ranks.
Yeah. The other argument, though, and Jay's just popped up on the screen, Kyron with no Groves while he's out could make a lot of cash, plus he's playing well. I think he is a cash cow. I think if he's given the opportunity, he's going to probably score above his, what is he, about 180K?
Yep.
Yeah. Whereas if Cooks has a bad game, he could quite easily slide a lot of cash.
Yep. Mate, look, it's Jack White to Jalen Adams. I think you can only trade in one of Jalen Adams and Xavier Cooks this week. Yep. If you had to choose, would you chase the upside in Adams or maybe the safer 70 to 80 from Cooks?
I think I'd go with Cooks. I think that the argument you can make for going with Adams would be a lot easier to just move that position straight to PJC next week. Straight swap. Whereas Cooks, you probably have to, massage it around, do a few things to bring him in. But I think Jalen Adams has a much worse break even, doesn't he? He needs to score about 40 each game to not lose cash.
Yeah, I think so. I think it is a little bit higher. I do think it's one of those big risk, big reward plays this week. If you've got the Kanakas, I do really like it. But yeah, you're definitely not going to make much money out of Adams.
No. And I think, once again, they're good matchups for him. So he could go big, but there could also be blowouts and they put him on ice early. Who knows?
Mate, that's about all the relevant trades out. There's a few people, somehow have the trade for Rob Lowe to Xavier Cooks. Your Lockie Ulbrich to Xavier Cooks. There's a couple people doing Shea Illy to Majok Dang. Look, I can't really hate on too many of those. There's some guys bringing in Rob Edwards this week. They're all really good options. Probably the Majok Dang is Kyron Galloway, I just think, is a better option than bringing in Majok Dang.
I think it's a better long-term play. I think we've just seen too much variation with Majok Dang. Sometimes he comes out and blows us away with that game, and then we end up chasing last week's money and it's not there anymore.
I've got one for you.
Sometimes may be good, sometimes may be shit.
100%.
I haven't delved into the sound bites for a little bit. Mate, let's have a little bit of a chat about captains.
Are you ready, kids?
Aye, Captain!
Mate, you start us off with one player who you think is the best captain option this week.
I'm pretty torn. I think my top three, I could be swayed any which way, but Kendrick Davis is up there.
Yep.
Who have you got?
How do you look? Go Kendrick Davis. I think Trez is still a good option this week as well. I do have him. I look. Your top three is probably, I'm presuming, Davis, Adams, and Cooks.
Yeah. I did not have Trez in there at all.
So I've had 5 written down on my page when I had a look, and I do like Davis, I do like Adams, and I do like Cooks. But as I've had a lot of a chat about this spring cleaning that I wanna do through my team, that I wanna fuck off some of these Illawarra players. I don't want to see Rob Lowe in my team ever again. I've had a look at some teams where I've saved some money and maybe not got a Cookson and Adams in on a 1 week play. And I just land on Trez and Rob Edwards as two guys that you could play in a pinch. I still think Davis is better than them as captain options, but if I had to pick a top 5, it would be those guys.
All right. Who are you putting as your captain out of Rob Edwards and Montrezl Harrell? And let me give you this as some background. Rob Edwards is probably going to play 40 minutes. Montrezl is probably still going to play low 20s.
Yeah, Rob. Yeah.
Talking about Montrezl, I hadn't really considered him. I hate the matchup versus Sydney, and I love the matchup versus Melbourne for him.
That's where I drew. I think that he will absolutely tear the great white shark, Jack White, to shreds.
Yeah. And look, do you play more at the centre? Is this a game where you probably can't play as much of Montrezl and Hump together? Because on one end, I don't think Jack's going to guard him down low, but Jack's pretty mobile and he's hitting the 3 reasonably well. Is Montrezl going to chase him around all night? Who knows?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Maybe Trez was a bit of a stretch, but Rob Edwards is a guy that I could see myself captaining. I don't see him getting too low 20s, like maybe we saw with Magne this last week.
Yeah. Is this the week to have a pod captain?
I think it is. Sometimes it's not what you spend, it's what you save. And
that is your second favourite line that you've ever come out with of mine. You know what the first is? It's the one you came out with last week where you said, you've got to fish where the fish are. It's just been playing on repeat, rent-free in my head all week.
Look, I'm glad I've got some real estate because that's me inside your head. I'm glad you've got me with some real estate there in your head. I do like that. And I think that there's a lot of merit to not getting in one of these Sydney guys in a 1 week play. Just because I think it's short-term gain for long-term pain. Yeah.
And when we talk about pod, I don't think either of us were talking about bringing Burger in. That is abysmal.
Thanks, Crafty Boy. I'm glad you appreciate my karaoke session. I did sing a bit of karaoke on the weekend. You haven't heard my my rendition of Stacey's Mum. It is a bit of a favourite of mine. Mate, let's answer a couple of these questions and wrap it up in the next 15 minutes.
It's question time. Let's answer your questions for the week ahead.
Mate, you've been doing a great job starring them in the background, so let me scroll up and we'll pick out some of the good ones. Hayden M is thinking about ripping a second boost and getting Dang, Prather and Galloway in, but he'll only have 4 starters on the double. Do you think that's worth it, Hamish?
No. I think if you've got your court set, I think you can get the cash out of Prather and Galloway and leave Deng alone and save yourself a boost for something more worthwhile. I think you're looking at 3 guys who are forwards. I know Prather's forward and guard eligible, but I think you're starting to clog up your bench a little bit. I think they'll all make a bit of cash, but if I was to take 2, it'd be Prather and Galloway.
I'm the same. I really like the Prather and Galloway ad. I like Dang, but I think Dang is just 1 week away from banging out a 3-pointer, and then all this good that he's done just drags out. I love the spring cleaning idea. I love getting Prather and Galloway in. I'm presuming for your Davo Hickeys and your Lockie Ulbrich and blokes like that. I think that you'll have a real step. And actually, with your lineup here, I think that you'll find most classic teams will only have 3 starters on a double if you do this. So you've got to step up there. But I do think that maybe Dang is just a little bit of a stretch. Maybe you could just save that boost. And if Dang's right, hopefully you've got enough money to bring him in next week if you still feel that way.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be more cash cows to come as New Zealand comes into the mix next week. But look, I do like where your head's at getting cash generation because we do know looking at the schedule it is backloaded, and you're going to want to have that cash to get some of these premium guys to just sit and park and have playable guys on your bench run into the last sort of 7 or 8 rounds.
Mate, the sports guy's always on the show, and he's just asking the question. He's got 260K in the bank, and obviously, like most of us, wanted to go Armstrong in. We've talked about Kyron Galloway as an option via Jules, but if you didn't have Jules, do you know of anyone in that sort of space with just a guard that we could bring in for that 260K?
Look, Pedro Bradshaw we talked about. We didn't love him, but he's 258K. Could be a pod. Whether he steps up or not, yet to be seen, but he needs to step up. And he has played around that 30 minutes a game, every game so far this season. So the opportunity's there. Off the top of my head, look, Shea Illy's coming in lower than that if you already hold him. And you've talked the pros and cons of that.
Yeah, I think maybe he's probably trading out Shea Illy. I think the boring, shitty answer is if you have to ask this question, maybe you just hold Shea Illy a week and hope that he can get 25 points and that you go and make 20K. But I don't, honestly, at guard, I don't hate bringing Casey Prather on a single with a negative break even. He's got this really good role with Brisbane as he's working his way back. And Southeast Melbourne are not a very good defensive team. I wouldn't be surprised to see Casey Prather drop 30 again this week.
Yeah. And look, your other option too, and we discussed off the top, this is maybe a bit of a Hail Mary, but maybe go someone a lot cheaper, like a Kyle Adnam, who's going to see an uptick in his minutes and roll this week. At 80K, you're going to have an extra 180 or so in the bank, which is going to help you next week to pivot some of these premiums without having to blow up your squad.
No, I don't hate it. Mate, TOG, not so much a question anymore because I think we've answered it before, but he can bring in Prather and still have 6 already on the double. So that's some sensational forward thinking from you, my friend.
This is a luxury. If you've got your court sorted, this is a great week to start tinkering with your bench and planning for a few weeks ahead.
Mate, I don't know how much jet setting you've done, but Luke Rogers is asking if we're worried about the jet lag effect of New Zealand coming back from the US. What's your answer?
Look, if history's anything to go by, yeah. I don't think there's been many teams that have hit the ground running coming back from these NBA, NBL crossover games. How are they done in the States now? Is there only the 2 games or is there another one?
No, I think there's another one. I think they played OKC. I think they've got, I can't remember exactly the team, but there's one more.
Yeah. I think there'll be a bit of a hangover. I'm hoping not, and I'm hoping they're back early enough to get their feet under them. But probably more concerning is they lost by 55 today, and Taco Fall was a no-show again.
No, Taco Fall won't be playing through the rest of the period. He is 100% out. And from the interview I saw with the coach, I don't think he will be. He won't be coming over this year, basically. Look, they're glad that they made that connection with Taco and maybe in the future. But yeah, it's basically it's not going to happen this year. Can I just say that?
A sigh of relief.
Yeah, I just think that regardless of whether we're worrying about the jet lag effect coming back from New Zealand, Parker Jackson Cartwright, after scoring a couple of 50s, you can't. He's the closest to must-own I've seen. You have to make sure you have the means to bring in Parker Jackson Cartwright next week, and that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, whether that's saving cash or having expensive guys you can trade, make it happen.
or planning to rip a boost. You can always run one of these guys down really low next week. I think Parker Jackson Cartwright, with that draw going forward, with the price rise that's expected, with the genuine captain option that he is, this is the one where I'm not going to say it's not what you spend, it's what you save. You really have to spend up for PJC.
Yeah. And especially this week more than any other week. There is very, very few captain options. And if you can't afford PJC, you'll be left behind.
Mate, I do just genuinely enjoy comedy. And Kez G saying, I'm hearing NBA scouts are calling Max Darling Tony Snell-esque, just really brought me out with a little bit of a giggle. Look, Matty Granger's ranked, I think, in the top 10 at the moment. So thanks for popping in and asking for our advice. I don't know why. But Edwards or somebody else on a double, or Doyle for next week. So I'm going to dissect this a little bit. I'm presuming he's going to need somebody cheaper than, say, 360K. So he can't bring in Adams. Rob Edwards, 295K on a double this week. Or trade in Milton Doyle 1 week early at 350K. In anticipation for that double next week. He has a break even, just to help you, a break even of 26 coming into this week at 350K.
Yeah, I think he covers that easily. And we talked before, he is a heavy minutes guy. I don't think he's played under 34 minutes a game. Had a little bit of an inflated score with his overtime heroics last week. Has not shot the ball well. I think he was 6 of 24 and only hit shots when they mattered. Tassie versus Illawarra. Illawarra has been flying. Tassie's been pretty rough. Only scored 9 points in the first quarter against Perth. I've played with this trade. I think Milton Doyle will be a real pod next week and it'll be great to have. I think if you've got the rest of your squad on doubles, I would take him on a single over maybe some of those other guys that you're talking about, like Rob Edwards on a double, just because it's going to save me a trade next week. I think over 2 weeks it works out even, if not better.
Yeah, I think it's the same. I do like that if the stars align next week, which it probably doesn't, if it means holding like a Will Magnay or something through that period, that maybe you could get Rob Edwards in this week, only to trade in Milton Doyle next week, maybe using Rob Edwards and maybe holding Kendrick Davis through this period. If he goes off again this week, he could be making cash for the foreseeable future. I don't mind bringing in Rob Edwards and then having the flexibility to go to Milton Doyle next week if everybody else is just, going sweet.
And the other side of that is if you bring in Doyle this week and don't have to do it next week, maybe you've got that flexibility then to upgrade your bench to Taron Armstrong and get that really juicy cash rise that's coming.
Mate, the next one, read this one out while I look up something and tell them no.
Yeah. So Hayden M is asking, do we go Gack over Galloway? Galloway could be concerning if his shot isn't dropping. So we sort of unpacked this a little bit before. He's been shooting the piss out of the ball this year. What we have seen in Adelaide and bits and pieces here is he does get some sneaky stat lines with the steals and the blocks. Haven't seen them every game. I feel like he's a good enough player to contribute in a whole host of areas. Gack concerns me because Adam Ford's big man rotation has always been funky. It screwed Supercoach teams left, right, and centre last year. But he's a high points per minute guy. He was exceptional last game. So I think you could roll the dice, but I think Galloway's the safer option.
Mate, I like that. I might have to come back to the next question as I look up our Insight group number. But Rob Spunk has a question for me. Am I right in thinking that somebody who's averaging 40 points every game is worth 400 points? Without Supercoach Plus, it's a little hard to figure it out. It's actually not. It's actually, I'd have to work it out, but I think it's about $8,000. So if somebody's averaging 40 points, they're going to be worth, say, about 440. 450. So in my head, I've always taken about 15% off that, mate. It's super easy because it's about 10 or 11K with NRL Supercoach, but it goes the other way in NBL Supercoach, Rob. And if you slide into my my DMs, I'll find it exactly because I was talking to the Supercoach Whisperer about this in the DMs this week, and if I look through them, he's got the exact number for me. So,
The one we do know for sure is that 277K is a 23 break even.
yeah. So there you go. It's even a touch more than that. Logan Angove is asking Galloway or Dang. I think we've answered this, but both have 3 games in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, Galloway for sure.
He does have a good one about bringing in Magnay, and that's not Josh McJett in the chat. Is it worth bringing in Magnay next week if you have to trade him out this week? I don't love this. I think if you want him next week, just find a way to hold him.
What if you don't hold him? Do you bring him in this week in anticipation of next week?
No. What I've seen with basically late 20 scores spattered with a 56, if he scores a late 20 score, he is not worth bringing in at his price next week.
No, I agree completely.
Take a moment to rip into Toby. Read out his question.
Yeah, look, you're going to regret ever asking this question, Toby, because Tyler Robertson will never, ever be a viable option. He had one little game in a blowout where they gave him some extended burn. He won't be a cash cow. He won't be relevant. He's a project. Solid player, but they've stashed him for a couple of years. They signed him to a 3-year deal. He likely won't see meaningful minutes this year. Stay away.
No. I am with you there. Read through Voixie's questions here, mate.
Yeah. Big Wardenberg to Cooks and keep Matt Hurt, or Matt Hurt out for Cooks and keep Wardenberg. If I go the first option, I'll have to play one of Hurt or Lepepe on the field. I would play Hurt over Lepepe if you had to. I don't think that's the worst option. Hurt has been exceptional. He's been high 30s, low 40s most of the year. So I think Hurt over Lepepe is a no-brainer. Wardenberg to Cooks. I don't hate it. I like Wardenberg to Cooks and keep Matt Hurt.
I don't. I think you've probably got to keep Wardenberg if you've got him through this period. Like it's a negative break even. It's a double. Look, I like the idea of keeping Matt Hurts, but you've got to trade out. You've got to trade him out.
But remember, with Wardenberg, that 50 will drop out of his 3-game rolling average after this weekend.
He's still going to make some serious catch. Doesn't he have a negative break even still?
I haven't looked. You'll have to bring him up. But, yeah, look, there's some good options there. I really like Matt Hurt. I think he's already generated about 50-odd K in cash gen this year. He's been pretty special. Wish we had listened to our own advice and been as high on him and actually put him in the team after preseason. But, yeah.
Mate,
yeah, break even 50 this week. So I don't think Wardenberg's making cash. I think he'll be probably on par to just break even.
Yeah, okay. No, in that I actually do really like keeping Matt Hurts. Sorry, I was trying to answer somebody else's question by looking up our league code and getting everybody in and giving them the opportunity to win a standard squeeze pack. But the one-eyed eagle in the chat, we've talked about it a little bit, but any love for Gak and playing him this week, mate?
Look, if you're going to play him any week, this is probably the week to do it. It'd definitely be a pod. But you need to start to think about your exit strategy because he's going to become irrelevant reasonably quickly, both schedule-wise and if Groves returns. I've been high on his game, and I know talking to some of the guys who are pretty close to the Illawarra camp, they were pretty high on him too, despite never playing him. He used to tear it up in practice. So I really don't know why he doesn't play more minutes. But what we do know is that he doesn't play more minutes regularly. So I think it might be a pod this week as long as you've got a exit strategy. But I think there are better options.
Mate, I am reading through. I know there's some people asking about the code. He's coming for the standard squeeze pack this week. I am excited. Look, guys, I've got it up on the Patreon. Pop in, go get our free Patreon. It is below. I'm going to repost the code for the standard squeeze because I can't find it at the moment, and we're due to finish this episode. I'm going to repost it on the Patreon and our Discord. Oh, there you go. Logan's got it up. 202-868. So I'm not sure it was that, but anyway, post it up. Pop in that. I'm going to pop it up on all our socials and repost it. But mate, good luck this weekend. I think that we are going to have some very different scores this week. This week is going to be holding on for the roller coaster or trying to make some really big moves. And I think that if you make really big moves, you're going to struggle in the coming weeks. It just works out if you want to make that move this week or the upcoming weeks. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I'm with you, mate. It's tempting every week to try and just keep beating your scores and getting those teams stacked with doubles. But I think some weeks you got to be happy to hold and set yourself up and don't make moves that are going to screw you for the next couple of weeks to come. So, look, this week we'll separate the men from the boys. We knew this was coming, the next 2 rounds, and I can't wait to jump on Monday on the pod and see how everyone went and handled the weekend.
Mate, I was pretty hungover, and we just had some absolute horror stories with our kids on Monday. So we were pretty chill on Monday, but I'm going to be genuinely excited to pop back on again, I reckon. So
Yeah, for sure.
all right, guys. Thanks for popping on. I know this has probably been our biggest show of the year so far, so definitely appreciate you guys. And you've listened to an Insight Fantasy Sports podcast. Cheerio.